before that, I just wanted to explain to you all, give you a little bit of a backdrop, what happened from the time that the 1916 proclamation was executed, and those that executed it were thereafter executed themselves. From the 24th of April, from the moment that document was promulgated on the steps of the GPO, the Provisional Government was constituted, and the programme of the Brotherhood, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, was to be delivered from there on. IRB Sinn Féin won an overwhelming victory in the 1918 general election. On the 21st of January, as Barra will take you through in a while, Dáil Éireann and the Dáil Éireann Court were established here in the round room here behind us. But before that, all the documents that were agreed upon and promulgated on that day had to be approved by the Supreme Council of the IRB at General Headquarters, Florence Hotel, which we'll be going to later on today. All of the documents bar one were agreed on the 20th of January. The democratic programme was taken away for some amendments and was brought back at 4 AM on the 21st of January. Then the Supreme Council were in agreement that the programme of the Brotherhood could be delivered through those documents that were to be followed by Dáil Éireann. What happened years after that changed everything. But the claim for the people of Ireland, for the ownership of Ireland, has been reaffirmed every year by the IRB, every year on the 21st of January. On the 21st of January 1919, Tom Maguire reaffirmed the claim over the sovereign territory of Éire for the people of Éire. Every year since then, the subsequent presidents of the IRB have reaffirmed the claim over the sovereign territory of Éire. On the 21st of January 1919, the authority which was vested in the IRB since the 21st of April 1916 for the governance of a sovereign independent nation state, representative of the whole people of Ireland, rested in the bowels of the IRB. For Dáil Éireann and the Dáil Éireann courts to have full power and effect, that authority had to be transferred by the Supreme Council through their president to Dáil Éireann, to give Dáil Éireann authority to govern the sovereign territory of Éire. That authority was transferred on condition that the Dáil follow the programme of the Brotherhood to the full letter of the law, which, as I say, was to be delivered through the documents that Barra will explain to you shortly, that were promulgated here on the 21st of January. And it was transferred, the authority was transferred on condition that the programme would be followed to the full letter of the law, and failing which it reverted automatically to the IRB. Now in 1922, there was a so-called treaty put in place. It's very hard to find that treaty. We know about the Articles of Association, we know what they say, but we know that any treaty doesn't last for more than 100 years, according to the Articles of Association associated with that particular treaty. Those 100 years expired on the 5th of December 2021. Thereafter, the Supreme Council of the IRB was restored and undertook their due diligence to see what has occurred for the previous 100 years. How has this sovereign nation state been managed by these corporations? The Supreme Council was restored on the 22nd of February 2022. The foregoing constitution of the IRB was updated on the 17th of March. There have been further amendments as the work progressed and the due diligence progressed with the IRB. On the 22nd of June 2022, IRB Executive Order 22822 was executed by the Supreme Council, whereby the powers for governance of the Irish Republic, the 32-county Irish Republic, reverted back to the IRB. That doesn't make the IRB the government of the country. It merely protects the right of the people of Ireland to a sovereign, independent, democratic 32-county government. That authority will not be transferred until such time as the IRB believe there's an opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government, conditional upon the programme of the Brotherhood being followed to the full letter of the law. Later on today, we will promulgate for you the programme of the Brotherhood, so that you can be in no doubt what the IRB hold in trust for the people of Ireland. Speak to you later. God bless.
So folks, 104 years ago today, in the round room of the Mansion House here behind me, the first Sovereign Hall gathered. It was a large crowd had gathered, including 50 foreign journalists, or somewhere around that figure. The entire proceedings were conducted as Gagas or Rinna Himothy Galer Trí Gaeilge. Father Michael O'Flanagan, who was Vice President Sinn Féin at the time, he opened the proceedings with a prayer, and then Cathal Brewer was then duly appointed as Ceann Corlia. Then the roll call was taken on Rulla, and only 27 of the 73 Sinn Féin TDs were marked as Iláthar. Many others were called out as Fui Glas Ag na Gaillimh, locked up by the foreigner, or Erdíber Ag na Gaillimh, imported or deported, sorry, by the foreigners. When the names of Michael Collins and Harry Boland were called out, who were not present, somebody answered for them. The reason for that was to divert attention away from authorities, the fact they weren't there, because at that present time they were on their way to England to break Eamon de Valera out of Lincoln jail. There was several documents read out on that day as well, which we're going to hear now. Two documents in particular: the Declaration of Independence, or Ferogra na Saoirse. Very, very important document. As John said, it essentially, that document ratified the Proclamation of 1916. Unlike the Proclamation, however, the Declaration of Independence was ratified and adopted by elected men and women as per the will and wish of the people in the 1918 election. So, chun Ferogra na Saoirse lei amach, Darren.
Ireland's Declaration of Independence, issued by the Dáil Éireann at the Mansion House in Dublin, January 21st, 1919. Whereas the Irish people is by right a free people, and whereas for 700 years the Irish people has never ceased to repudiate and has repeatedly protested in arms against foreign usurpation, and whereas English rule in this country is and always has been based upon force and fraud and maintained by military occupation against the declared will of the people. Excuse me. And whereas the Irish Republic was proclaimed in Dublin on Easter Monday, 1916, by the Irish Republican Army, acting on behalf of the Irish people. And whereas the Irish people is resolved to secure and maintain its complete independence in order to promote the common weal, to re-establish justice, to provide for future defence, to ensure peace of home and goodwill with all nations, and to constitute a national policy based upon the citizen's will, with equal right and equal opportunity for every citizen. And whereas, at the threshold of a new era in history, the Irish electorate has, in the general election of December 1918, seized the first occasion to declare by an overwhelming majority its firm allegiance to the Irish Republic. Now, therefore, we, the elected representatives of the ancient Irish people in National Parliament assembled, do, in the name of the Irish nation, ratify the establishment of the Irish Republic and pledge ourselves and our people to make this declaration effective by every means at our command. Do ordain the elected representatives of the Irish people alone have power to make laws binding on the people of Ireland, and that the Irish Parliament is the only Parliament to which that people will give its allegiance. We solemnly declare foreign government in Ireland to be an invasion of our national right, which we will never tolerate, and we demand the evacuation of our country by the English garrison. We claim for our national independence the recognition and support of every free nation of the world, and we proclaim that independence to be a condition precedent to international peace hereafter. In the name of Almighty God, we humbly commit our destiny to Almighty God, who gave our fathers the courage and determination to persevere through centuries of a ruthless tyranny. And strong in the justice of the cause which they have handed down to us, we ask His divine blessing on this, the last stage of the struggle which we have pledged ourselves to carry through to freedom. Thank you.
Darren Harris, Bowell, Ard Clordia, Brochus Fulbright Naher, and Darren is a Supreme Council member of the Irish Republican Brotherhood. Scale of Hall Aaron concern Nation on down. Bit of a mouthful, but essentially translates message to the free nations of the world, which is also another document that was approved by the Sovereign Dáil Éireann on the 21st of January 1919. It was aimed at the nations that were gathering in Paris for the Paris Peace Conference, seeking recognition of Ireland as a sovereign republic, sovereign independent state free from British rule. And it was written and adopted in 3 languages, Gaeilge, Béarla, August Frankish, so Irish, English and French. Now, Colm Brennan here, another Supreme Council member of the Irish Republican Brotherhood, is going to read it out for us now in English. Actually, it's not French or Irish. So come on, Colm.
Message to the free nation of the world. To the nations of the world, greetings. The nation of Ireland, having proclaimed her national independence, calls through her elected representatives in Parliament assembled in the Irish capital on January the 21st, 1990, upon every free nation to support the Irish Republic by recognising Ireland's national status and her right to its vindication at the Peace Congress. Nationally, the race, the language, the customs and the traditions of Ireland are radically distinct from the English. Ireland is one of the most ancient nations in Europe, and she preserved her national integrity, vigorous and intact, through 7 centuries of foreign oppression. She has never relinquished her national rights, and throughout the long era of English usurpation, she has in every generation defiantly proclaimed her inalienable right of nationhood down to her last glorious resort to arms in 1916. Internationally, Ireland is the gateway of the Atlantic. Ireland is the last outpost of Europe towards the west. Ireland is the point upon which great trade routes between east and west converge. Her independence is demanded by the freedom of the seas. Our great harbours must be open to all nations, instead of being the monopoly of England. Today, these harbours are empty and idle, solely because English policy is determined to retain Ireland as a barren bulwark for English aggressment. And the unique geological position of this island, far from being of benefit and safeguard to Europe and America, is subjected to the purposes of English policy of world domination. Ireland today reasserts her historic nationhood the more confidently before the new world emerging from the war, because she believes in freedom and justice as the fundamental principles of international law, because she believes in frank cooperation between the people for equal rights against the vested privileges of ancient tyrannies, because the permanent peace of Europe can never be secured by perpetuating military dominion for the profit of empire, but only by establishing the control of the government in every land upon the basis of the free will of a free people. And the existence of state wars between Ireland and England can never be ended until Ireland is definitely evacuated by the armed forces of England. For these, among other reasons, Ireland resolutely and irrevocably determines at the dawn of the promised era of self-determination and liberty that she will suffer foreign domination no longer, calls upon every free nation to uphold her national claim to complete independence as an Irish Republic against the arrogant partition of England, founded in fraud and substantiated only by an overwhelming military occupation, and demands to be confronted publicly with England at the Congress of Nations in order that the civilised world, having judged between English wrong and Irish right, may guarantee to Ireland its permanent support for the maintenance of our national independence.
Folks, we'll be finishing out this part of the day in a few moments with a reading of a poem by Paul Barnes. But just before we do conclude, we're not just here to celebrate the establishment of the first Dáil Éireann. We're also here to affirm and reassert our sovereignty. Sovereignty is mentioned 3 times in the proclamation of 1916, so I think it's very fitting that I'd reference a pamphlet written by Patrick Henry Pearse, The Sovereign People. In it, Pearse said that national independence involves national sovereignty. He said it was twofold in its nature, both internal and external, and implied the sovereignty of the nation over all of its parts and all things therein. And on an external basis, it implies the sovereignty of the nation as against all other nations. And he reduced it down to just a few simple propositions. He said that the end of freedom is the end of human happiness, that the end of national freedom is the end of individual freedom, therefore individual happiness. He said national freedom implies national sovereignty, which implies control of all the moral and material resources of the nation. Now, today, folks, in the world, in the Ireland we live in, yes, our sovereignty, our freedom is under attack, maybe in a different way than 1916 or 1919 was, but therefore it does require us to exercise our sovereignty for the good of the nation, since national sovereignty, like everything else on earth, is subject to the laws of morality. Pearse finishes his pamphlet with this quote, and listen to these words, it's quite apt for the world and the Ireland we live in today. It's very short. The nation is the family in large, an empire is a commercial corporation in large. So let's remember why we're here again today, not just to celebrate the formation of the first Dáil, but that also our sovereignty that was given to us and ratified by the first sovereign Dáil Éireann. We're going to close out proceedings now with Paul Barnes, who's going to read his own poem called The Turning of the Sovereign Seal. After that, then we're going to make our way to the GPO. Has anyone got a time there by any chance? How are we now? 20 minutes past 12. I'd say it'd take 20 minutes to get up there for us all, or 20 to 25 minutes. Not even, but we wait for the majority of the crowd and we kick off from there. It'll be a short stop and then we make our way then to Parnell Square. So put your hands together please for Paul Barnes, The Turning of the Sovereign Seal.
Hello, how are you? Welcome all today and a happy Independence Day. I wrote this poem some years ago, I think it was 10, maybe 12 years ago, when I met Billy and had the privilege of being inside for the turning of the seal. And it was news to me, as it is open to Irish people. Anyway, I was inspired to write this poem, and it's called The Turning of the Seal. We are not subjects to a sovereign. We are sovereign to ourselves. And by standing by this nation, we can be self-determined where we dwell. On our forebearers' action as a step along the path towards a freedom that's before us, while it's still within our grasp. We may be a small nation, but we can fight above our weight. As individual sovereigns, we instinctively know what's right. With self-determination, we resisted controllers in the past. Now let's renew our inner knowing, establish a freedom that will last. The harp, our national seal, a covenant between God and man, a multi-useful instrument showing the way across sea and land. Learn of its hidden uses, honor the pride we rightly feel by turning up at the Mansion House for the turning of the seal. A golden fringe around the flag is a symbol of maritime law, and barristers serving bankers. Their commitment is to the bar. Leading back to the City of London, estate within estate, this calls for comprehension. Then we must do what's right. Look into the Anglo-Saxon mission to gain insight to their plan. Then the chaos that surrounds us on the sea and on the land will make perfect sense to those who agree with their evil deeds, while they reduce the population of everything that breathes. The common law of the land should be backed by our Constitution, and the fringe around the flag means maritime law and great deception, serving the bar as evidence of the treason. With legalese and secret rights, they wage war against our freedom. The ancient people of this land used the Brehon law with wisdom, common sense and understanding, and a fairness what is more. Tap into this ancient wisdom, its guidance to reveal, as you join us at the Mansion House for the turning of the seal. Thank you.
Okay, Corge, book for me the Ryan Ishvig on GPO. To the GPO!
Sean. How are you? Good, thanks. Right folks, just finishing up here now before heading down towards the GPO. But I'd just like to relay a little story, if I may, about a man called John Boyle O'Reilly, who was born in 1840 in County Meath, who was a Fenian and a member of the IRB, was arrested and deported to Fremantle in 1868. Now he managed to escape and made his way to New York, and he bought a whaling ship called the Capalta and managed to convince an American captain, Anthony, to sail the ship to Fremantle. And on Easter Monday 1876, the 6 Fenians there were dropped their tools and ran to waiting horses, which they rode to, how you doing, how are you? Which they rode to Rockingham and jumped onto a longboat, and they rowed out to the main boat. But interestingly, the Royal Navy at the time sent out a ship called the Georgette, and just over the 3-mile international limit, they fired their 12-pound gun at the Capalta, and they managed to get out into international waters and sail to New York, where they were met and greeted by 10,000 Irish. Just thought I'd share that little story. Right.